Okay, welcome to those that are joining us from home, as well as a few folks that have joined us here in council chambers. This is a work session for the Poquoson City Council. It is Monday, September the 14th, and we're here to talk in work session about sign ordinances. So, Dan, I believe you're going to give it to us. Give us the brief.
All right, could I get the lectern laptop on the PowerPoint slides, please?
All you need is use the arrow. Damn arrow.
On this?
No, damn arrow on the keyboard.
There it goes.
There.
All right. So good evening, everyone. In lieu of a regular session presentation, we decided on doing a work session to present our proposed changes to our sign regulations. And tonight we'll be discussing signs in the public right-of-way in specific. So some current background. Our current sign regulations are split between two different sections of the City Code, that being Chapter 6 of the City Code pertaining to advertising, and also Appendix D, which is the official sign ordinance. Both of these sections do contain conflicting and sometimes contradictory language pertaining to different types of signs. And our current practice is a mix of either following Appendix D or following parts of Chapter 6 and trying to ignore the parts that conflict or come up with our own interpretations, and it makes enforcement very difficult at times. In addition, there was a Supreme Court case a few years back called Reed v. Town of Gilbert, in which the court decided that regulating the content of signs outside of a really strong, compelling government interest is unconstitutional. So we are not really allowed to do content regulation of signs, and this pertains particularly to political signs. We're not really allowed to define what those mean based on this court case. So our focus first is on Chapter 6. We're proposing a number of different changes. This, we believe, is the minimum we would like to have to change the ordinance at this time. And just to go over some of the specifics that we are proposing for tonight. First of all, we would like to remove an article regulating political signs. I think that's Article 1 in the current version of Chapter 6. This we would consider redundant because we are rolling all of the regulation for these temporary signs, which would include political signs, into the remaining section of Chapter 6. So we would rewrite that remaining article, and those are the changes that you see before you this evening. And that would apply to all right-of-way signs, including those that are put up during elections. So we would have, Chapter 6 would pertain only to signs which are found in the city right-of-way alongside our roads, and then Appendix D would be for all other signs in the city that are on private property, commercial or residential. What you see before you is basically we are amending the ordinance language to be in line with current practice and to streamline it so that we are treating all of these right-of-way signs more or less the same. So we are simplifying the permitting procedures, we are updating the code language to be in line with what we currently do for a lot of our signs, and we are also taking into account City Council and Planning Commission suggestions regarding sign size and signs at intersections. So the language you see before you was recommended by Planning Commission back in February of this year. So two of the more substantial changes, which are different from current practice and what was come up with through Council and Planning Commission consultation, one of which is the size of signs. We are changing the language in the code to say that signs greater than 4 square feet in area or taller than 3 feet above grade must be set back a minimum of 20 feet from the curb or edge of pavement. So we did a lot of research trying to come up with an appropriate maximum sign height. We really couldn't come up with a definitive answer. There was a lot of disagreement and not really very good examples out there in terms of other code changes. So we've come up with this as a compromise. So anything larger than 4 square feet Wally, if you could just hold up that sign. That is a sign that we picked up about a year or two ago. That's about 3.5 square feet. So just as a visual aid, anything larger than that would have to be set back 20 feet from the curb or edge of pavement. The 20 feet is a recommendation from our city engineer for traffic safety and visibility purposes. I believe it is the same distance that the new city sign, the electronic sign on Victory Boulevard, is from the curb. And just as another visual example, this is also on Victory that sign scaffolding is exactly 20 feet from the edge of the curb. So that's the distance we're talking about. Functionally, this would mean that any sign larger than this would have to go along Victory Boulevard. That is the only area of our right-of-way that is wide enough to accommodate such signs, and that is typically where such larger signs have usually been allowed in the past. So the other big change is regarding signs at intersections. We are taking the existing language and adding on to it and clarifying it, so which will now read, signs will not be permitted within a public right-of-way within 200 feet of the following street intersections. So we have With Creek and Victory, With Creek and Poquoson Avenue, Yorktown Road and Hunts Neck Road, and Little Florida Road and Poquoson Avenue. Those are already in there. To this, we are adding Victory Boulevard and City Hall Avenue, and Poquoson Avenue and Municipal Drive. So no signs will be permitted to be placed within 200 feet of those 6 intersections. In addition, there will be no signs allowed, no signs permitted within 200 feet of the official city identification signs near the city limits, and that would be on Victory Boulevard and With Creek Road. So as another visual example, we just put up a sign that we found. This is on the intersection of Victory and With Creek Road. So you see the sign there, that is placed 200 feet from the intersection, just to give you an idea of the distance we are talking about. And the picture on the right is the same sign, if you can see it from the other direction. So no signs would be allowed at those 6 intersections within that distance. They would be removed. As for that, there are a number of other smaller changes. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them. But that is it for my presentation.
Okay, questions, council?
Just want to make a quick observation, Mr. Mayor. I have absolutely no issue with any of this, but the one part that might be a little tricky is the additional intersections, especially, well, the primary one want to talk about is Poquoson Avenue and Municipal Drive, because every election there's signs, on that opposite side of the street at Tabernacle, which is a polling location. So I think that could present some issues on election days, all election days. And to be quite honest with you, it's going to be a lot of upset campaigns if we have city staff plucking signs, the morning of an election, because a lot of these folks, will come to the city and put their signs up that Monday night, leave them there Tuesday through the election, and they're gone after the polls close. So I think that's a little gray area there. Not sure if we want to include that or not, or how we plan to handle that on election day.
So Dan, what's your thoughts on that? How does that apply? I'm going to go back because the one question that I had, and it kind of mirrors on that, say political signs are not in the ordinance. Clearly you're talking about political signs, right? Candidates for office. How is the city going to treat those? You're still saying can't have them within 200 feet. I'm okay with that as a goal.
Well, the way I read that, maybe I'm wrong, but that's not a through intersection. The intersection is only on one side of the road. So the way I read that was that you cannot put them within 200 feet of the actual intersection of Poquoson Avenue and Municipal Drive. There is no intersection on the other side. So to me, that wouldn't apply to the opposite side of the road.
That's, kind of what since it is on that opposite side, are those signs
Okay.
going to be okay? Or
if that's the case, then I would like the language inserted to make that clear, so that future councils understand that what this one meant by that, right? It gets lost over time, tribal knowledge versus writing it down. So just as long as you clarify that in that location, I'm good with it.
Yeah, my understanding was that was added towards the end of this update process to try and clarify to keep those temporary signs away from city property along those two intersections, but I guess we could definitely clarify
Okay.
or maybe remove that.
The other question I have with you on that very same intersection is, does this ordinance, as you envision it, does this apply to city signs? Because the Seafood Festival seems to put a lot of signs there as well.
We did add an exception. City signposts may be erected in the public right-of-way by the governing body or a public utility without a permit. So that would cover the existing city electronic sign and what we would consider city signposts erected in the right-of-way.
Okay, Roger, I hear that. I not necessarily like that, because I don't think we're kings, right? Randy, have you got anything on that one? Because I'm a little concerned that, you can't write standards and then not follow them, right?
Understood.
So if y'all want to,
Understood.
if there's a way that you want to do that to allow other seafood festival patrons the same type of thing in a certain time zone or whatever, I just don't like setting rules for others and not following them ourselves. That seems to be a role of,
I understand. The issue there, if it's a directional sign or a sign pertaining to safety, we're going to have the ability under ordinances to put those up. If it's an advertising sign, I think in terms of, particularly in front of the municipal building, if memory serves, the last time that I recall it, the incredible amount of signs there were all, none of them were city signs. They were political signs on the city property, and they were so many of them that it was forcing people to actually walk in the street during the event. That's why we talked about adding this towards the end of the process, because our experience was, particularly on elections that had a large amount of signage on the side of Poquoson Avenue, adjacent to that intersection, the side towards the pool. It's so thick with signs that it was forcing people to walk in the street. And that was just, we considered that to be unsafe, and that's what we were trying to get at. And if we have to also keep our signs out of the city right-of-way there, if that's the cost of being safe, then I think that's a cost that's worth us taking on.
I would just like to see staff kick that one around a little bit more, because I can understand arrows. I think most of ours are advertising signs that says it's going to cost you this much to park. It may have an arrow on it, but I just like to see y'all take another turn on that. Like I said, it's just a pet peeve of mine. Council may disagree with me, but I just do not like setting standards for others and not following them ourselves. So if you can make sure that,
Mayor,
make
can
sure
I
that,
make a suggestion?
yes, sir.
If the only area of concern the council seems to have is the intersection of Municipal Drive and Poquoson Avenue, rather than waiting, I'd ask the council to consider, following your public hearing, to adopt the ordinance, just striking out that intersection. We'll go back and do some more work on that intersection. That'll allow us to essentially take advantage of all the work we've done up to now, identifying all of the issues we're trying to fix, and with the exception of that one, rather than putting that back in the queue for a few months.
Okay. That's a good suggestion. I'm looking at, making sure nothing else that I've seen us do stuff at, with Creek Road, Poquoson Avenue, North Florida, Poquoson Avenue. Okay, yep, that seems fair. All right, we'll do that. I think council's all nodding their head up and down. I don't know if you can see it on the camera.
If Randy's concern is political signs on that city property, is there a way to say only city signs are allowed on city property? Or is that the same thing?
There is, Councilman Andrews. It's just that some council members are concerned that we have one set of rules for the city government and one set of rules for everyone else.
Yep. Okay. Dannon, you think you understand what we're asking there?
Mm-hmm.
You can certainly bring it back pretty quickly. I can see some minor changes to get you what you want. May just want to be more finite in that area of, for
Yes, sir.
safety, that sort of stuff.
Gene, I have a question about a separate issue, and I don't know if it was considered or not, but along With Creek Road, if the sign was more than 4 square feet in an area, if one of the businesses in the shopping centers or the area up where the doctor's office is, okay, if they wanted to put a sale sign or some sign for some special event there, it says it has to be 20 feet off the road. If it's 20 feet off the road, then it's down in the parking lot. And if it's in the parking lot, then the sign can't be higher than 3 feet above grade in the parking lot to probably 3 feet below the road. And so, was there any consideration?
Mr. Southall, this
Yes.
pertains only to signs in public rights-of-way, and it does not pertain to signs on private property.
Oh, okay.
So if a business wanted to have a sign on their property, they would be governed by the Appendix D, which once City Council is satisfied with these changes, we'll begin to work on that too. But the changes for you tonight only relate to city rights-of-way.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
So I'm just going through my head on the various signs that we'll see, and I'll just remind us all, this is one of the hardest things we do, right? It's, there's no writing these rules to absolutely make everybody happy. The other more prevalent sign is either car washes or youth groups or whatever, or garage sale signs on With Creek Road. Where, by what you've got written here, if they're in the median or the green area on With Creek Road, they're going to be good?
No, sir.
That's what I thought. So,
And I would add that they're not good now. They're prohibited at those intersections currently.
But aren't they allowed if they're 200 feet from the intersection? On With
Yes.
Creek?
I'm talking about the 20-foot setback.
Just not at these intersections.
Okay.
On West Creek Road,
Go back to
there
the
are not
20.
many 20-foot
Yeah, go back
right-of-way
to the
setbacks.
20-foot setback.
I'm not familiar with
Greater than
that.
4 square feet in area, taller than 3 feet above grade, must be set back a minimum of 20 feet from the curb.
Those are just the big signs.
Okay?
But the little ones can be, as long as they're 200 feet from the intersection, the little ones can be there, right?
Okay.
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
All right, I'll just mention that sometime in the future, we would like to try and amend Appendix D, hopefully for the last time in a very long while. So if council wishes to pass this with that provision for the intersection omitted, we can certainly bring that back before we do Appendix D and make any little changes and bring that to council at a future date.
Okay. Any last questions before we close up?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Should
Right.
we have language in there defining exactly what the intersection is? For instances like Poquoson Avenue and Municipal Drive, that is only on the side of the road
Yeah.
of the intersection?
I think we were going to delete that one. We're going to delete that while they go write that language,
Okay.
and instead of us trying to come up with it.
Very good. Thank you.
Otherwise, we're going to struggle this evening trying to write that while we're. Okay, and that closes out the work session. See you in about 9 minutes.